learn how to operate kind of.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, it's being recorded, so everybody know that, okay?
But learning maybe how to operate outside your strengths, as far as, you know, like dealing with how to deal with confrontation in a constructive way as opposed to a destructive way. I think that a lot of times you have those when you have difference of opinions, when you need to get somebody to do something maybe that's really against what they kind of are.
Yes, yes. And what Doug's talking about is understanding, if once you have a deeper understanding of yourself and you accept yourself, then you can support yourself and be, in essence, bent your ego. And we'll touch on that, Doug. I don't know how deep we'll get into that, but we'll touch on that, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, anybody else? I'm here for you. So I'm here to give to you, to use the giver's concept. Any other expectations or questions that anybody has before we get into the content?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay, so then let's go to the page which has the four colors, and let's talk about identification again. Okay, because here, Mike, you brought up identification. Tim, you brought up identification. Siri, you brought up identification. So okay, so let's review this again. Okay. So anybody recall what step one was with this? Anybody? Steve, Steven, do you like to be called Steven or Steve?
I go by anything. I've been called worse.
Okay, all right. Do you remember what step one was, Steven?
Honestly, as far as I can remember, it was identifying yourself to find out what letters you are.
Yeah, okay. Remember, I had everybody stop. Put your hands, do this exercise again. Put your hand in front of your face, practice stopping. Step one in DISC is to stop and look at yourself. Now, so Stephen, what's your natural style?
My natural style, as far as my letters?
Yes.
Yeah, CD.
Yeah, CD and CD and S, okay? Okay, so that means that you in your natural style want to communicate and get the facts and get the results and get out, right?
Yep.
You don't need to I don't need to tell you about the story about my parakeet. You don't want to hear about my story and my parakeet, right?
Yep.
Okay, now we all have a style, so you have to practice stopping and look at your natural style. So, Syria, what's your natural style?
I and a D.
Yeah. So you're going to start a little more social. That would be your natural style, right? But you have the I, you're social, and you're in HR, so that probably works out pretty well. But you still want to get the results, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and why this is so important, and I use Frankl because I love Viktor Frankl, and he survived Auschwitz, and he's working on himself at Auschwitz. We can't use people and circumstances. We can't say, well, I would have communicated better, except that the circumstances weren't right or the people weren't right. You can't use that, right, Tim?
No.
You got to say, hey, the circumstances are the circumstances. It's raining outside. Get a raincoat, get an umbrella, or get wet. Now, that's what Doug was talking about outside your strength. If you know yourself and how you react, so you're not gonna know how your normal reaction is, but if you can stop and see yourself, now you can choose perhaps to speak differently. But if you don't stop, what Frankl said, between stimulus and response is space, and in that space, our ability to choose. But if you don't stop, you have the stimulus and response. You're going to just talk in your natural style. So how would that be for you, Doug? What's your natural style to talk to people?
My natural style is just, hey, let's get it done. Let's do this, and then we can move on.
Right. And that's fine with a lot of people, but if you're having to deal with Matt, who's in high I, Matt would probably prefer a little bit of warmth up front. Although you got your you're an imported Texan, but you got, he would probably like a little more, greeting and friendliness. Is that accurate, Matt?
Yeah, I think he needs to butter me up a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm pretty direct on that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, by the way, we mentioned this before. The Southern eyes take more time than the New York eyes. You know, you go to New York, they're like, they're right in your face. But so culture influences us. We discussed it. So the step one is to practice stopping. Because what's the common denominator of all your relationship breakdowns? Ellen, in every relationship breakdown you've had, what's the common denominator?
You're not getting what you want.
I don't know.
Oh, what about anybody? What's the common denominator of all your relationship breakdowns? Every relationship breakdown.
Me?
Spiritual.
Michael Gonzalez, give Mike $1. Michael Gonzalez, you. The common denominator is you. So if you can buy this idea that, okay, maybe these D's are very difficult for me. Maybe the I's are very difficult for me. Maybe the S's are very difficult. Maybe the C's, but they're not changing because I don't like it, right? So now you have a chance to stop and say, well, maybe if I approach it this way, it'll work better. That's what stopping does for you. And your stress can drop like a rock. There's an application called Disc and Stress that maybe we'll do later, but that's the premise there. Okay, that's step one. Now, step two is to ask yourself if they're an extrovert or an introvert. Now, if they're an extrovert, what are our choices? Anybody, take a wild guess. They're an extrovert, what's the choices?
When you say what's the choices, what do you, I'm not sure.
DIS or C. What if they're an extrovert, they're either a DIS or C. What would the choices be if they're an extrovert?
D and an I.
Bingo. Okay, D and an I. So now you narrow it down. So if they're an extrovert, they're D and an I. Now, Tim, how would you know the difference between the D and the I? What's the difference when you meet a D versus an I, Tim?
Well, the D is going to be direct and is going to want to get to the point and stick on business, versus the I is going to be more friendly and open and
yeah. Underneath here, remember the D's are results customers. Here's how I view this. The customer definition I have is the person in front of you when you're speaking, at the end of the email or the end of the call. So they're either a D customer, which is a results oriented, or an I, and they're relationship oriented. Remember that. So extroverts, D's results, I's relationship. So when you so let's go back to you, Tim. So when you have to deal with a D, because you're an S and an I, so this is a profile that's a little bit different than your style, right?
for my natural style. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Correct.
So what do you think you need to do? How do you start the conversation with the D?
Keep it on task. Be clear, specific, like it says, brief, to the point.
Yeah. What do you want, Mr. D? This is not by the way, this is not being disrespectful to the D. What result would you like out of this conversation? I want this. Okay, done. Anything else? No, click. Okay. These are not relationship people. The D's and the C's are usually not on the relationship scale. So, okay. So if it's an extrovert, you gotta pick it out. Now, everybody, as you saw this, everybody has DIS or C between 0 and 100. The higher it is, the easier it is to pick out. So, Syria, what would a D's email look like when they're pissed off?
Oh, very colorful. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, colorful.
I guess
Yeah.
direct to the point, maybe on.
Yeah. Where is mass product? So, so you start stopping and paying attention. You haven't even met this person and you'll know it's a D.
Mhm.
Right? What do the D's do when they're sending you an email? What's the other sign that it's a D? It's on the email. What does their emails look like?
They're very direct. They want, this is what I want. They're not like all relational either.
Right. They're right. Okay. So step 2, stop, introvert or extrovert. Okay. Step 3 is to pay. Now the introvert, let's go on the introvert. It's a little bit trickier. So people sometimes say, how do you pick this out? A, I stop, I pay attention to signs. The S's do not ask a lot of questions. The S's just sit there and look at you. They're like staring a hole in you with warm, caring eyes. C's are going to ask you how-to questions. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? C's want data. Can I have some data? When you go to the Steves of the world, he wants to know how things are going to work, and do you have any data to back up your opinion, right? Right, Stephen?
Yep.
Okay. So they're going to ask how-to questions. When you see them on a job interview, they're going to have questions. They're not going to have warm and fuzzies. The C's are not warm and fuzzy people. They're not like the I's and the F's with that warm, caring eyes. So this is how you stop and pay attention to these signs. Doug, any comments or questions so far on this?
No, I think that just identifying those things are really helpful. Being able to identify.
Now you pay attention. Step 3 is the 4 signs: voicemail, email, offices, and the 4th is behavior in their eyes. So you stop, extrovert or introvert, you make your best guess. Now you're not sure, pay attention to the 4 signs. Michael Gonzalez, how do you know it's a C by their office? What would be a telltale sign that it's a C by their office? Because you want to know identification. What does a C's office look like, Mike?
I think it'd be very neat.
Yeah.
I would think that they probably have like maybe pictures of family and stuff like that around.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
C's you hit red. The C's are very accurate, very neat, order, color-coded folders. What does the C's emails look like, Stephen? Well, you know, you haven't met this person. You get an email, and it's a C's email. What does that email look like, Stephen?
I'd say like bullet points. It'd be very clear. It'd have a subject line. Would be very clear what the email is about.
You see Stephen would be an example. You can pick them out. So now what you do, you stopped. You're seeing that this person is an extrovert or introvert, and you pay attention to these signs. These signs will tell you what you're dealing with, and now it can show you how to start dealing with them. Okay. What does when you meet an I? What do the eyes do when you meet them face to face, and what do their eyes look like? Siri, you want to talk about that? You got a lot of eye. What would you see in the eyes of an eye, and what do they do when they meet you?
Well, the eyes of an eye look like really happy, awake.
Yeah.
They talk a lot when they meet you.
Yes, they're going to pull. This drives, by the way, this is what not to do with the Stevens and the Heidi's of the world. They're going to tell them their life story. They're trying to, remember, they want to be friends with everybody. Each of them have a fear. The fear of an I is loss of social approval. So they're pleasers. They're trying to win people over. You're not going to win a C and a D over if you're an I. They're not looking for a relationship. They're looking for data and information. And that's where that's where the communication breaks down. You're trying, but you're using the wrong technique. Okay? So you pay attention to their voicemail, their email, their offices, behavior, and eyes. Voicemail, what their office is like, their email and behavior and eyes. Let's go through one. Let's go through the D since that's one. So you can see the deer has a fear of being taken advantage of. So what's the one thing you never want to do with a D? And you got Doug has a lot of D. What's the one thing you never want to do with Doug? The Dougs of the world.
Take advantage of them.
Yeah, what happens when you take advantage of a D?
They get pissed off.
They get pissed. They're coming at you. They're coming at you. Okay.
And they never forget.
That would be more C than a D, but yeah, they may hold it. But the point of it is you don't want to promise and not deliver, because it's not being a giver with a D. So you need to be aware of this. Even if I'm going to be 2 minutes late with a D, I will email and call them and say, I thought it'd be 2 o'clock. It's going to be 2:02. You don't want to promise. Now, that sounds ludicrous to I's and sometimes S's, but you break down the relationship with that. So you don't want to be promising not deliver and not call. Nobody can deliver on time all the time, right?
Right.
Except payroll. Payroll's always on time, pretty much always on time, other than payroll, but you need to communicate. So the D's voicemail is going to say, Bob, call me. The email is going to maybe skip your name, which isn't a good idea if you're a D, and it's going to say, where is this? If they're pissed off, it's going to be flash and caps. And when you get face to face, Tim, with that D, what do they do to motivate you? How do you D's try and motivate you, Tim?
They'll say it's urgent, or I need to know right away, or
yeah. You're gonna be a big boy, Tim. You're gonna get it done, or am I gonna have to come over there and help you? They're gonna challenge you, right?
Yeah.
Challenges, veil threats, outright threats. Now, why do you think the D's do that, Tim?
They think that that's going to get you to do it because that's what motivates them being challenged.
Bingo. So when you want to get Doug to do something, you say, Doug, you'll never be able to do this. Tell Doug, which isn't what you would normally do, right?
Yeah.
You would never say to your boss, but it works with these. Now, I told the story to some people, so I'll tell you, it's a cute story. So I have a 7-year-old granddaughter. She's 4.5 years old. I go to visit her. She goes down a slide. She's climbing up. She's an East Coast D. She came out barking orders. She's 4.5 years old. She's crawling up a slide. I told her, she's very difficult. She calls me JB. I said, you'll never be able to climb up that slide. She's 4.5 years old. She climbed up that slide. I did it. I'm telling you, it's ageless. The language is ageless. And it decreases stress because you're talking to people in their language. Syria, how many languages you speak?
2.
What's the other language?
Spanish?
Do you speak to Spanish and people that don't speak Spanish?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't understand.
Yeah. That's why this is called the international language. Speak to D's and D language, I's and I's, S's and S's and C's. Why? It reduces your stress, reduces their stress. It works. It works. But it requires what Doug says, that you stop, you bench your ego a little bit, and you got to say, I don't like doing that, but it's going to be better. Okay. Ellen, any other questions you want to ask Ellen?
Not at this point.
How about Steve? What facts do you need, Steve?
I'm good. You already gave us a sheet that shows everything.
Yeah. By the way, what you do with C's is you give them the silhouette of the United States. You may only want them to work on Arizona, but you give them the silhouette of the United States and you point out Arizona and you give them as much data as you have. Now, if you don't have all the data, what do they need to do with C's? Steve, if I don't have the data, all the data, everything you want, what do I need to say to you?
Can you figure it out? Yeah, I was gonna say, can you figure it out, or can you find more resources?
Yeah. Well, you got to tell them. You don't sugarcoat it with C's. You tell them, hey, I know you want more data. I don't have any more data. This is all I got. Hey, Steve, you're a smart guy. How did Lewis and Clark get the C's in the boat? On the boat, you know, back in 1804, how did they get the C's in the boat? There is no, what's the plan? There is no plan. What's the data? There is no data. What do they tell the C's to get them in the boat? What do you think?
I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either. You don't sugarcoat it with C's. Do not sugarcoat it with C's. But does that, don't, you're an I or a D. You don't, I know you're going to love this. You're going to feel good about it. It pisses them off. Doesn't work. They don't want to hear that. Okay. Graph 1 and graph 2. Any questions on graph 1 and 2? Why do we suggest use your natural leadership? Why do we suggest graph 2 or your natural leadership style is what you should focus on? Why do we say that? What would you say to that, Doug?
Because that's who you are. You're good. That always is going to kind of come out. That's going to be that symmetrical tendency.
Yeah. And when you guys are doing future hiring, you want to get a sense. So if you're hiring somebody to do payroll, you don't want them to have a 4% C probably, you know? They may fit the culture, they may be nice people, but they don't have the traits to do payroll. Okay, so this is called, as a giver, you got gifts. Nobody's hired for their weaknesses. Use your gifts the best you can and augment. When you don't have it, that's why you got a leadership team around you. Matt, do you have any other questions you want to ask? Or your eye, how's your eye feeling, Matt?
I like it, but I think I disagree with the eyes being disorganized. I don't think that's necessarily, well, for me anyways, because I'm a high eye, but I don't think that's accurate in my eye category. That's your
What you said is a very common thing. Here's what what my experience would be. Eyes look disorganized to some people by how they keep paper, okay? Now, I don't know how you keep paper, but a lot of eyes have stuff all over the place. But I have clients that are brilliant, that have an organized mind. So it's with the paper, not the perception of paper, not so much their mind. And I don't know, you may be more organized because you know how you were brought up, or you just, because sometimes they have a problem with too much paper and and now we're on more computer systems, so it's a less of an issue, but it doesn't mean you have a disorganized mind. Each of the 4 fears: do not promise a D, fear being taken, promise a D and not deliver and not call. That is very stressful for them. Do not isolate an eye and make them feel that they aren't important. So Stephen, when you have to deal with your eyes, and you got to do work with Matt, for example, he's an 86% I and you're an 81% C. So you guys are opposites, right?
Yep.
So now you have to go into him with a little more how you're feeling stuff, even though that's not your natural style. You got to bend your ego. You see that?
Yeah.
Why? Why would you do that, Stephen?
Well, it makes Matt more perspective to what I have to say. If I come in and ask him first how his family's doing, how he's doing, and be kind and get to know him a little bit, and then I have to hit him with the facts and get my information and go.
You gotta start.
And you drill them, you take the information, you take notes. So yes, it's exactly on the money there. It's right on the money. Okay, so this decreases stress. Now, conversely, Matt, when you have to go to Stephen, what do you need to do?
Be more accurate and kind of to the point.
Yes.
Across.
So, number it.
Yeah.
You'll find that C's they have 1 of 3 things they use. They either say they like the steps, they like the processes, or some spiritual people, what are the rituals? So I listen to their words and I repeat their words. Here's the steps, here's the processes, here's the rituals. And then you don't deviate, because your eye, Matt, is like a kite in the wind, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, they don't like that. They like it. They're carpenters. They want it numbered. Okay. Why do you do that? It builds relationship. And Matt, you want relationships with people, right?
Of course.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions on this page before we move? Anybody? I'm here for you. So I'm here to give to you. If you have questions, ask. So Mike or Syria or Doug or Ellen, you have any other questions on this page?
I have a really ridiculous question, but you tell me why this bothers me. On my theory of behavior management, one of the papers, it's broken into 4 quadrants, kind of like, does he know what we're looking
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what he sent us.
at? Okay, because this one, you've got red, yellow, green, blue.
Yes.
And at the bottom, you've got S and then C. And on this other page, it's C and then S. And it's driving me nuts.
Because everything has to be your way.
Like, because I'm looking at both papers and I keep getting them mixed up.
You mean, okay, so on one, the colors are different for the different DIS and C?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm on the package we gave you today.
I have no idea.
I don't know. I'm looking at something from a few days ago.
Well,
No.
okay, so why don't I come?
C and then F, and on this paper it's S and then C.
Oh, you mean they're inverted?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it's a clerical error. I don't have a good answer for that.
Is there
And
a,
it would tell me, you know, and we talked about this when we did the one-on-one, but you have your natural style says IS, but you also have a particular side to you. So I'm not so sure your profile, how accurate your profile is. So we may have another conversation about that. Okay. Because you're particular, and part of that is that you used to do a lot of, I mean, you still probably do a lot of the compliance stuff in the firm, right?
yeah.
C stuff. Okay. So if you're a C, you want things done perfectly. And so that kind of stuff, are you perfectionistic, Ellen?
Yes. I like
Okay.
order.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're perfectionistic, and I'm a perfectionist, so I understand that, and we're going to do a bench your ego. This is not the session for it. But these kinds of things that don't bother most people will jump out at you. Okay. So thanks for sharing that. That was real good. All right. Anybody else have any other questions on this page?
How would I approach an S?
Is this Syria talking?
Yes.
Yeah. How would you approach? What do you think is the best way to approach an S?
I don't know.
Begin with a personal comment. Break the ice is what it says in there. Begin with a personal thing.
I'll begin like with a personal comment, like how's your family? Or I like your haircut. I don't know.
Yeah. Personal as in how's your family, or you look like you're tired today. Like
Right. And we're going to go into the S in more detail in a couple, but a quick thing for you is slow it down with your I and your D, slow it down with the S, and remember, and the C's like this too, but the S doesn't need the data. What, why, and how, and they are, you know, you just got to slow it down and explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and don't go so fast, especially if they're Southerners. Slow it down a little bit, and like Tim said, you know, do a little, you know, just don't jump into it. And your I and your D might jump into it, or might jump around a lot, which is confusing for an S. The D's, here's another way to think. A D's leadership style is like a rabbit jumping all over the place. So you can jump around with the D's. The I's like a sailor at sea, and they're going by the wind, which is why you can move them a lot too. The C's are like carpenters by step by step by step. And the S's for you, Syria, are a train on a track, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, which is why your company is doing systems, a lot of systems and programs for S's and I's that de-stresses them. It gives them an easier way to do their job. So we'll come back to the S in a couple minutes here. Okay, Syria?
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to the D. It says, it looks like this. It starts with the D. It starts at the top. It says, how does your leadership style impact others? D, the dominant leadership style. So I'd like you to read. What I want you to do is read about the D leadership style, the D pluses, the D minuses, our tips for D leaders. This will fill in more details for you, you know, to give you a little more what to do's and don'ts, and tips for working with a D. And as you know, our resident Ds are Doug is one of our Ds. Steve has a secondary D. Syria has a secondary D. So read this over. Let's do a Q&A on it. I want to ask our Ds what they think about it, and then I'm going to give you my tips.
What page is it?
It's the first page. It says the D. It starts out. It says how does your leadership style impact others? It says the D leadership style.
On the PDF, the page right after the graph. Page 3 on the PDF.
Okay. Everybody got it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to read it over, and then I'm going to See, as you read it over, if you you don't understand something, or you got questions, or you're impacted. Like, for example, Tim, one of the things that we said that I just touched on, it says under these, they overuse threats, challenges to empower people. And we just touched on it already. Is Omar with us now?
Yeah.
Oh, he is. Good. Omar, anything you want to say, expectations out of this, or anything that you want to comment on, since we didn't do that at the beginning, that you want to say right now?
No, so far, as far as what I've walked into and listened, everything seems pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Astronomy.
So let me start with Stephen, if I could. Stephen, what on this page jumps out at you that you want to comment on?
To me, looking at it, I was reading that the minuses of need to put some limits and boundaries on themselves.
That's
But
for the D, yeah. The C, remember, you have a C, which naturally puts boundaries, but the Ds have no boundaries.
so the C is the one that you worry about being taken advantage of, correct? But D is the one that takes advantage but needs to put a boundary.
Well, they could. I mean, I think all four styles can take advantage, but the D is always going to push boundaries. Okay, they're always going to push you for more. They don't view it as taking advantage. They just want more. So if you did it if you did the job in 45 minutes today, what do you think a D would say to you, Stephen?
So we can get it done in 35 tomorrow?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Matt, any questions about this D? Anything jump out at you about what you read about the D, Matt?
No, I don't think so.
How about you, Omar? What jumps out at you on this page about the D profile?
I mean, nothing really jumps out at me. I can see the characters.
Okay.
And the traits and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about you, Syria? Anything that you want to comment that is surprising on this, or, hey, I don't understand this?
I wouldn't say surprising. I just would like to know how to navigate. I mean, I'm a D myself, I and a D, but where it says that they can be difficult and demanding, right? And then they can be intimidating to the S's and the C's.
Yeah.
And then we say that they can upset I's because of their curtness and impatience and the possibility of displaying of anger. So,
yes.
So if these are a lot of minuses for the D's, like how do you navigate when this is present?
Good. Okay, Doug, how would you answer that? What you're the highest D, but you also have Steve as a secondary D. How do you navigate when a D is being pushy or and can be intimidating? You heard her what she said. Well, how do you navigate? What is the way to address your D?
Well, I think that one of the things that is hard to go, nobody's just a pure anything. That's first.
Yeah.
I also have very high I. So right. I am always pulled in two opposite directions. You're like, you're like Sybil, which one are you going to get today? Now, if you happen to pull the D card, if you're gonna navigate that kind of thing, I think that if somebody's really on that D mindset, you're gonna have to say, okay, what are you trying to get at? What do you really want? If you're just gonna try to, you can't snowball and talk around an issue. You got to confront it with the D, and that doesn't have to mean that you've got to be nasty. You just got to say, okay, so what are you really looking for? I'm looking for, I need to get about 5 things done, and I need all of them are important. So how are we gonna get this done? I don't have time to think around on this for an hour here and an hour there and an hour here. I mean, we got we've got to get this thing done. So, and I'm maybe kind of going outside the lines, but how you handle the D is you're asking them, what are you looking for?
Right. Remember D's are results. You can go right to, it was a little bit of an ID answer there, by the way. You can go right to D. What result would you want? Now, a D is always going to say, when you say, when do they want it? What does a D always say?
More, faster.
Now or yesterday, which you can't do either, right? So you can't listen to them literally. So Syria, you got to hold court. You got to stand up and hold court with them. It doesn't mean you have to be an answer. You say, what result do you want? Well, I want it done yesterday. It's not going to be done yesterday.
Well, your question was, how does the D itself handle these minuses, right?
I just say when the D part and the person is present, how do we navigate that?
Well, I'm saying right now, you have to stand tall with them and hold court. So you have to say to them, you have to have a conversation with them about, they are expecting things. They are always going to be expecting things faster, better. They may be unreasonable. They have unreasonable requests. Okay. So you have to deal with them directly and say, look, you're not going to get this. You want, because what happens between the S and the D, so let's just use a scenario for this. So if Doug goes to Omar, or Doug goes to Tim, and he says that he wants something, he wants it in an hour or he wants it in a day, and they don't say anything, what do you think the D thinks, Omar and Tim, when you don't say anything to a D and they make a request, what do they think?
They think you're going to get it done.
Go ahead. Yeah, you agreed. Now, a lot of times you don't agree, right, Tim?
I don't think nothing.
Not, you know what I think? I think you're trying to blow me off because you don't want to commit.
I either commit or personally, or I will tell the person.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying, and I'm not saying this happens here, but what I'm giving you an example is, it's typical for an S to need time to process and not say anything, and the D thinks they're in agreement. So now you have a conflict. Your silence formed a conflict. So you have to communicate with a D and say, what result you want? No, you're not going to get that, but you get that. Don't worry, it's handled. Done. It's handled. My tips to handle a D is be clear, be brief, be gone. And open with a direct statement. They want results oriented. So talk about the results they want. Now, when they expect this, now here's the problem. The D sometimes, and I did this with some of you before, a D will sometimes say to you, Mike, put a gallon, put a gallon in there, right? So what do you need to do to a D when a D asks you for that which you can't do?
Tell them what you can do.
Yeah, you could say, hey, look, you're smarter than I am. So this is you could say to a D, look, you're smarter than I am. You show me how to put a gallon in there. Now, what we can do, you always give them 2 or 3 options. In selling, it's called an alternate or triplicate close. In management, it's just giving them options. I can't put a gallon in here, but I could buy 12 of these. I could buy the four quarts. I could buy the 5 gallon, which is the biggest and the best. A, B, or C, they all work. Here's the price with A, B, and C. Direct me what you want me to do. When you do that with a D, what happens? When you give them an alternate triplicate close, what happens with a D?
The biggest and best one.
They're gonna make a decision. Tell them, Doug, why the D makes a decision when you give them viable choices.
Because then I get it done. It's over. I don't have to mess with it anymore.
Yeah, instead of just saying doing nothing, or say this is a problem or no solution, which really aggravates a D, you come up. Now, if you're an S and you need more time, you say, I don't have an answer right now. Give me 15 minutes. The place isn't burning down. Okay. If you're an I, you say to the D, hey, do you have a few minutes to brainstorm, because I need to brainstorm on this a little bit. But you help them get results. When you help Ds get results, you have them eating out of your hand. So practice the alternate or triplicate close. Syria, anything else you want to say about that?
No, I'm Ellen. I have a question.
Okay, Ellen, go ahead, Ellen.
what comes in that, okay, a D, results, results, results. How accurate do those results need to be?
Well,
Where does that come in? Like, oh, okay, you got it done. It's close enough. Or do they want it like perfect?
well, if they're,
Perfect, I would say.
if they're a DC, they may be more rigid on it, but if they're a D and it might be good enough. You'd have to ask them another question. You say, hey, I can get this, but it's the quality is going to go down a little bit. The analogy would be you're at a restaurant, Ellen, and you're dying of thirst. It's 110 degrees outside, and you want some water. And the waitress is now saying, well, how cold does it be? How many ice cubes? No, just give me some water. So it's situational, but generally speaking, help the D get to the outcome. And they'll cooperate with you, and they'll keep coming back to you. I don't know if I answered your question well enough there. Did I, Ellen?
Yeah, that's
okay. Any other comments on this page that you jump out? It says they're selective listeners. Now, here's what that means. D's get the picture fast. So if you're an I or an S, and you don't tell them the whole story, if they already got it and they start wandering on you, engage them again. They get things fast. You don't have to paint the whole picture sometimes.
But sometimes I will say this, and Tim, you know this, sometimes I think everybody else has got it, what I mean. And that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Because I know, that's not what you said. And I go, trust me, I knew exactly what I meant. I may not have said it correctly, but I did know what I meant.
Yeah. So if you're a D leader, you read the tips for the D leader, because you guys talked about how can we communicate better as a management team? How can I do identification? This should help you identify. And this style, you don't have to wait with them. Now the Omars and the Tims would prefer to think about things before they talk, but this is a profile you have to go at a little faster, because your silence is agreement, and sometimes you're not in agreement, and now you got a conflict. In other words, because you don't want to go back and say, well, I changed my mind, or I'm not going to deliver, or not deliver and not call. Then you got a real problem. Be clear, be brief, be gone. Know they're rabbits. You can change. Keep doing reality checks. D, we still going to San Francisco, or now we're going to San Diego, or where are we going to? Open with direct statements. Be on the subject line. Start with what result. Don't beat around the bush. And when you have a problem, say, here's a problem. Here's some solutions. Here's an opportunity. Here's some solutions. These are not cost buyers. These are results buyers. If you have a customer come in there a D, you could say they want it in 5 hours, and usually it takes a week. They'll pay more for that. And if you're willing to deliver, you could do that with them. Say, I can get it. You want it instead of a week, I can get it in 2 days, but it's going to cost you 30% more because I'm going to have the crew stay overtime. Hey, I'll do it. Give me the result. Any other comments, Doug, you want to make on this? Or Stephen, you're a secondary D, you want to make on this page?
No, I mean, I think as far as like Siri was asking about how to approach a D or when they're approached with it, I would say the first thing that came to mind for me.
Mm-hmm. Doug, anything else you want to add? We had a technical difficulty. All of a sudden, your voice went away. So, can you guys hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay, Doug, anything else you want to add?
They're having internet issues, sounds like.
Yeah, you're breaking. At least I'm breaking up with the people. Matt, Doug, and Stephen, can you hear me? Tim, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. They're connected to Wi-Fi, which sometimes they have issues. I can go check to see what they're doing.
Matt, let's see if they're okay. Matt, Steve, and Doug, can you hear me? You want to go check on it? Mike, you're still okay, right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Any other questions about the D that, so what it says about you, Mike, is that on the job, you got a D, was a C, but naturally you're more odd. Do you pretty much DC on the job? Do you see that? Is that how you operate?
I think so. I think it's more of a blend of all three of them, really.
Yeah. So you go back and forth. Okay. So and you're running that facility. So I'm telling myself.
So we do have a secondary door in this direction. So you got to kind of to just let them think it through.
Matt, are they okay now?
That thing going on.
Okay, you guys can hear me in the conference room?
Yeah.
Now we're good. Now we're good.
Okay. Doug, is there anything else you want to say about the D before we move on to the I?
The one thing I did want to say to everybody, when we come across, and so I use that particular section for me to let y'all know how I know that there are certain things that I do. So help us with your particular style and how you relate. That'll help us to communicate better with you. If we know, okay, I know they're this way, I assume people just kind of know that okay, here he comes. He's going to be all over the place.
And again, feedback, when you have a breakdown or the relationship isn't as like you'd like, own it and then go to the person and say, look, I want to communicate better with you. Give me some tips.
One of the things that I've kind of developed or kind of put into practice when talking to a D, like for instance, Doug or Mike, is I kind of ask for context because I know they're asking me a question that they've already had the kind of conversation or the thought in their head.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't always make sense when you present the question. So I always respond with what are you talking about? More of a root thing to the conversation. So if they're asking me about a problem, I ask them who's the customer.
Okay,
so
good.
Why they're asking what they're asking.
Yeah, right.
Or just why is this issue coming up? Is there a problem with them? Are we late? Or are we just being preventative? You know, things like that. Because in their head, a lot of times they're asking things that already make sense. And that's kind of one of the things that I was telling Doug. I think I've just adapted to some of the personalities that I know how to communicate with around here. So yeah, those are some things that I do is I ask for context of the question that they're presenting.
Yeah, and this is Steven speaking right now, right?
No, this is Omar.
Omar, okay, good, very good. I can't see Matt, Omar, Steve, so if you could say who's speaking, that'd be helpful. All right, let's go to the I. Same page, read about the I, and let's talk about the I. Now, our I's on our team, our resident I's are, so if you have a D question, go to the D people. Okay, and Mike Gonzalez has a benefit of being a D on the job, but an I naturally. But the I's are, Matt is your highest I. Mike Gonzalez on his natural state is an I. Syria has a lot of I. Ellen has some I in her. So let's read about the I's and what are the comments and questions you have about the I's?
You can jump it up one side.
Yeah, put it back to where you had it.
That was better.
It's not going to fit the whole page.
I don't care.
I'm looking at the traits.
I move around. Just look at the traits.
That was a very deep.
Spoken like a D.
Shut up and do
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Doug, you got
So Stephen, what jumps out at you about the I? Since you're a CDS, what jumps out at you about the stuff on this I page? Any surprises here?
No, I think this is pretty accurate.
I would, as far as for me, I'd say I caught the fact of the poor details on the minuses.
Yes.
Because sometimes I see that, like, sometimes it's like a big circle to get to the actual fact that you need.
Right.
Started off the morning with coffee to find out they had a steak for dinner.
Yeah. So you need, and as long as they know you love them, you can say, look, I love you dearly, but I need details for this to solve your problem. So that's how you can communicate. As long as they know you care. Remember, the I's are relationship oriented, and you may have to, if you're a C or an S, you may have to go to the I's, and I manage I's. The I's I let talk. I's actually see it by talking it out. They talk and I write, and I put it into action. That's how I manage I clients. What about you, Omar? Anything on this page that you want to comment on that is surprising to you or a challenge for you in dealing with the I's?
A challenge, I guess, would be withhold bad news and maybe too passionate at times. I don't think that's good for anybody, especially in the work environment, because I'm really good at brushing. I don't take anything personal, especially at work, and I'm really good at brushing things off. And the reason is because it's just a waste of time for me. So yes. I think that's kind of one of the things that I think just for everybody, if they're hesitant with giving bad news, the news is going to come regardless. We're going to have to deal with it. And then being too passionate, I don't think anybody should take anything too personal as far as personally as an individual.
Yeah, and this goes back to Doug's. One of Doug's questions was, how do you deal with situations that like uncomfortable? So if you're an I, first of all, you want to empower I's. You want to make sure you acknowledge them, and you can do emails that acknowledge them and others. They respond very well to positive influence, optimistic, fun games. So this profile needs some nurturing that way. Now, if you're an I, you don't like to give bad news, and so you have to understand this about yourself, and especially you're dealing with the Omars of the world. Omar is a high S. S's are, in this Siri, you brought this up, S's are Mother Earth, Father Earth, and so they deal with problems very comfortably. Omars of the world, you don't have to avoid problems, but I's are going to avoid giving you bad news, Omar. That's how they are naturally. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. You got to be aware of that. If you're managing people and they're not as aware as you, and they're an I, they're going to probably sugarcoat it. Maybe you don't like that, and you just have them just like, give me the problem as it is, but that's how they are. You're meeting them where they're at.
Go ahead, man.
I have a question about the minuses of the few how-tos. Can you give me an example of what that's supposed to kind of entail?
Yeah, they don't, where the C's have how-tos to do everything, they're more of the I is usually like a kite in the wind, and they're just going by and there's some brilliance here. They sail by the wind. They're sailors, and they go, and they're not like really linear people. A lot of really smart, creative people, they don't have, it's like asking a fish how it swims. It just wags its tail. They don't have a how-to system.
Oh.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, they're usually not a how-to orient. They're not on the linear scale. This is right brain people usually. Very good at abstract feelings, emotional IQ very high. Emotional IQ is very high with S's too, but they verbalize it, but they're not necessarily detail oriented. And if you have questions about Ask the Stevens of the world, trying to get the details from an I, not easy, huh, Steven?
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're an I now, and you got to deal with the Stevens to decrease their stress, give them the details. They don't want your story. I don't want the story. Okay. And that's benching your ego and knowing yourself and knowing your audience. All right. Anybody else have any other comments or questions about this profile?
What do you think, Matt? What are some of the things that kind of unnerve you, the way people, is there anything that really kind of unnerves you or you do that would help other people to interact with you?
I don't know.
I know one thing that bothers Matt, and it's a good thing that it bothers him, that when people aren't on board, especially with changes, and
It's a team approach.
that team approach and stuff like that, when they're not on board, it bugs them. And I think that's a good thing though, because it's good to check people.
You're on the bus, get off the bus. Pick one.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well,
Matt, do you have any other tips from this page? Any other tips for the people to deal with eyes effectively?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Well, Sherry's got something to say, and then
Yeah, both. I was going to ask both of them, so whoever wants to go first.
Okay, so Matt, my question, I mean, I'm an I too, but for you, or to anybody in this room, I think that going in there and interrupting you when I need something and say, I need this report, I need this, or I need that. I think to get in there, ask you what I want, get out of there. I think that is like an efficient way to communicate. But is that uncomfortable for you? Like I'm in there just barking orders. I mean, I don't go in there butter you up or nothing like that. Is that offensive, or is that like stressing you out? Because no.
Say my first rodeo.
Well, I'm just wanting to be clear on.
The thing about that, like with me, is don't break my focus. So I'll ignore you until, and I have to, and and John told me to do this, is you got to learn how to ignore people, because what we do, we can't break our focus. So, and everybody's pretty good at it now, especially that are used to me, is that they'll just stand there and it's like, okay, I'll finish up and boom, I have time to talk to whoever it is. So he's dealing a lot with reports and stuff that he has to focus on too. So I could see like coming in and asking a question right away, because like my trade, I have to think about what you're asking me, and it's breaking my focus big time. So
that's how I am when I'm balancing.
I think that comes down to more of like a multitasking thing. And I mean, me personally, I don't know if this is an I thing, but I think I can multitask on certain things. Like if I was doing something and you walked in, you're like, hey, I need this too. Like I would be able to do that as well as work on what I'm doing.
But you're not detailed. And when I say this, I don't mean this this is always, but when you're not as detail oriented, it's easier, I think, to break that. Like his stuff, if you break his stuff and he screws up, he gets a reject.
Yeah. It's more.
If you screw up, you don't make money.
Or get paid. I mean.
Well, I'm hoping that I'm getting honest tech. It's like, I can make you make money all the time. Just I put it down wrong.
Hey, Steven, this is getting into high I stuff now. This is a high I meeting now.
Staring at the clock.
They're all talking. They're all talking at the same time. That's a high I meeting. And that's okay, by the way. Okay, so now remember that the eyes need, if you're managing an eye, you need to give them time to vent and work it out. You can rush an eye as long as you can be intimate with an eye. You can rush an eye as long as they know that you love. You can say, look, the plane's leaving. We got to leave. We'll talk when we get to the airport. You know, you can rush them as long as they know you care. Relationship. That's the key with an eye. And when you have it, and you can always work in partnership. Say, okay, here's what we need to get this done. Let's take these action steps. What you're doing well, what I hear from Doug and you as a company, I heard, you're putting steps and systems in place. This helps the I and the S. Now, the I may not always like that, but they need it, okay? So these are, we need to get this done. Here's the steps. And when you deal with an I, you need to allow them enough time. They are customers. If they're customers coming in, they're coming back to you because I have a relationship with Michael. I have a relationship with Matt. I have a relationship with Steven. They're not buying your products. They're buying you. So that's really important to know about this. You could challenge them with games like the D's. I tell all my D clients, Doug included, I don't think you'll ever be able to get it done. But the I's, I challenge them, but I make it a game. I have a sales manager. I said, if you get your quota this quarter, which I don't think you'll be able to do, and he's a D and an I if you get it, I buy dinner. If you don't, you buy me dinner. We make it a game. You game it up. You make it fun. I's want to have a little more fun. Okay, can we move on to the S?
Yes.
No.
Okay, let's read about the S and see, and then we're going to ask our quiet ones, which may have thoughts, they may not. Tim and Omar are resident S's. And so let's read about the S, which I would assert on your line. These are probably a lot of your line people. They're probably doing most of the work of your company. These are the train on the track, steady eddies, come to work, do their job, go to lunch, go back, do the job, come back the next day, the next week, the next month. These are remarkably determined people that are low maintenance, quiet, steady. So I'm going to go back to Syria. You brought up the S before. What comments or questions do you have, Syria, about the S here?
I just like how they don't like personal changes.
Yeah, right.
You know, changes have to happen. So how, you know, how, I don't know.
When you're making a change, think of a train on a track. Think the S of the train on the track. It cannot, like a D or an I, jump around. It's like a steamship or a train on a track. So you have to make a change as a process. You have to give them as much time as possible. And they're okay with that. And you tell them, Syria, the words you use, this is what we have to do, we need to do to secure your future, secure the firm's future. Those are the words you use with the S. The S's respond to need and have to. And you make it predictable. That's why in continuous improvement, I like companies making it a habit like brushing your teeth for the S, to get the S always changing little by little.
Yeah, because I see the derailment that I'm gonna have to pick up and clean up if the track's not laid down right. And that's really what it is.
For you,
really, yeah. I'm like, okay, if this doesn't go right, I have to fix it. You know what I mean? Or I'm gonna have to figure it out. So I think that's why sudden changes. Because I'm looking at the first one, has predictable.
Who's speaking right now?
This is Omar.
Okay, Omar, go ahead.
Work with the same people or similar tasks or functions because it makes sense to me. Like changes, if I can't see the reason why the change, you know what I mean? And that's not
If
that
it is
is
broke, don't fix it.
yeah, pretty much. And that doesn't mean that, not to negate that a change can be a positive thing or not. But if I don't see it right there and then, I'm gonna not so much oppose it, but I'm gonna be slow to it.
Here's a mistake, a D and an I. A D and an I says, here's an opportunity, here's a possibility. Stop using those words. It doesn't work with an S. The S is a have to person. You have to say, this is what we need to do and have to do. That's what they respond to. The S is the most determined of the four profiles. You guys are near the Grand Canyon. Think of those mules at the Grand Canyon. They're not stopping until they get to the top or the bottom. These are extremely dedicated people that are going to stay on the path. It's extremely valuable, but when you have to make changes, you have to build in a process for them, and you have to say, this is what we need to do and have to do. Those are the words I use. I have a chair, Doug, I have a chairman of a board of a $400 million company, and those are the words I used to use with him. Silence is not agreement in this. So when you're dealing with the Omars and you're dealing with the Tims and they're silent, don't think they're in agreement necessarily because they didn't say anything. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're thinking about it. Remember, Young says the D's and the I's feel themselves in action and they move fast. S's and C's think themselves in action. S's want time to process. So the I goes to the meeting, D goes to the meeting. Here's a great idea. What do you guys think? Bam, 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 bam. That's the I and the D. The S needs time to think about it. Slow it down. This is a tip. This is specifically for you, Syria. Slow down. This is what we're going to do. This is why. This is how. use the words please and thank you. I cannot emphasize from worldwide research how powerful the words please and thank you are to, it's respect. It's showing respect. Make it safer to do what you need to do than what the status quo is. You need to say the status quo is not going to work. We need and have to do this. That's the word you use with the S.
Okay.
Need, have to. They work very hard. They need structure. Structure, and more structure for S's and I's. A train cannot just wing it. The D's will say, just figure it out. The S's don't just figure it out. They want to know where the train needs a track. Doug, any comments or questions on this?
Nope, I totally get it.
Tim, any other tips you want to offer to the group to be more effective with your S?
No, I think people kind of said it like Omar. I kind of agree with that. I have to understand why something's changing, not just, hey, this needs to change. Then it's like, what's the reason? And I have to agree with it and think it through and go, okay, that makes sense. Not just, hey, we need to do it this way. Right.
The what, the why, and the how to, and give the S time to think. Now, if the place is burning down, just let's all get out. But if it doesn't have to be done, say, I'd like you to think about it. So if I'm dealing with you, Tim, and it's not, I would say, I'd like you to think about it for a week, and then we'll talk about it. With Doug, Doug and I will just talk about it, make a decision, and we go.
And that's what we've done in the past. With Doug, will do that with some of the meetings. He'll be like, what's the answer to these questions? And I'm like, well, I'd have liked to got them ahead of time or think about it.
Right. That's a very typical DI. DIs like to brainstorm right on the spot. And you get them in the meeting, those DIs, they're all talking over each other. Funny stuff, huh? And they get a lot done that way. Okay, anybody else have Ellen, any questions about the S you wanted to ask?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, let's go to the C. Our resident C is going to be Stephen, but a lot of you have secondaries. Stephen's a high on the job. Matt secondary C on the job. Omar third on the job. Mike Gonzalez C on the job. Tim Kettering C on the job. So, so there's a lot of C on the job, but naturally the highest C is Stephen.
I can see that.
I'm going to start with you, Doug, on this one. What jumps out at you on this profile?
Just the displays mental quickness and resourcefulness in improving things. I think that's just a really good trait. And I've pulled that on with Stephen before because Stephen has had some experiences that I know are the right experiences, but we've just never done them here. So I really affirm that's really a good thing to have. I really appreciate that.
Sometimes the C's are the quickest thinkers, but not the fastest talkers, but they're very good. When you give a C where we're at and where we have to go to, and you give them data, tactically, they're brilliant. They're really fast. They can see it. And so that's their plus. They'll also work within boundaries. So if you give the Stevens of the world, now Stephen's got a secondary D, so it might be different with Stephen. But if you sell Stephen, you got a $2,000 budget. The C is not going to spend $2,001. The D will just spend as much as they need to get the job done. Not the C. So they work within a box. So you want to expand the box for the C. You never want to criticize a C. Tell them, Stephen, why you don't want to criticize a C.
I don't know. I'd say we take it more personal, even if it's corrective criticism.
Yeah, they don't want constructive or not. You're not going to win an argument with a C. Do not criticize them. When you don't get what you want from a C, you probably gave them incorrect information. So don't criticize them. It doesn't work. And they'll hold, you mentioned holding a grudge. Doug, they'll hold the grudge. I had a sister, she can remember what happened in 4th grade. They got data.
I think you should tell on the disc over again because I think she's a C.
Yeah. Who are you talking about?
My wife. I've never won an argument.
Yeah, Ellen, okay.
Which is hard. No, it was really you. I mean, it drives me crazy. I'm not handling that.
Yeah. So they base their decisions on proof, not just opinions. Superior critical listening. Follow the rules they perceive. Now, they can be very rigid, like the D, but even more so rigid. Do not, when you make a mistake with a C, you cannot win. If you have a promise and you promise 7 things, you only deliver 5, they'll remember that and they'll call you on that. So you gotta be more thorough up front with a C. You gotta make sure it's very black and white. With C's, I don't have it in gray. I say, you're getting, you're not getting. It's a very dualistic conversation. You're not getting. It's not like S's and I's, they're in the gray area. There's no gray with C's. You can bring up stuff like love, goodness. They sort things in boxes, which is why they're so good at this organizational stuff. But in human relations, sometimes they box it too fast. They appear to sometimes have not care because it's nothing that they don't care, but they have they don't have, if they're like the I and the S, a lot of empathy. So they have to verbalize it. So Stephen, you have an S of 54%. You see that?
Yeah.
So what you can do with your S is with the eyes is that they can talk and you can be sleeping with your eyes open, but that helps them process and they feel like they're respected and being listened to. You see that?
Yes.
That's a way to do it. Anybody else have any other challenges that they have in dealing with this identification? This is an easy one to pick out, by the way, as I told you. Their voicemail is going to be professional. Their emails are classic. You know it before you even met them, right? How many typos are on C's emails?
None.
None. When they give you instructions, what's in the instructions?
Bullet points.
Everything you needed to know, right? Right, Stephen? If you give me an instruction, everything I need to know is in there, right?
Yeah.
Now, remember, the eyes don't read the emails or comprehend them necessarily. It's too complicated. And the D's are like, what's the point? So you have to then adapt.
That's why we don't read each other.
So my tip with the D's, my tip with the C's is do it right. Make sure you're competent. Don't sugarcoat this. Make sure you use the word right. Let's do it right. And do very good interviewing and tell them all the negatives up front. This is not negative to Omar's of the world. Omar even mentioned this, S's and C's, but C's even more so. Tell them all what they're not getting up front. Explain, like with the S, the what, the why, and the how. You just give them more data. They want more data. Like when you go to the bank, they want data, right? Mm-hmm. And I use the word right, and I never criticize the C because it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to say anything else about the C here?
Well, how do you challenge them when they are wrong?
They're never wrong. It's your fault.
You can't win an argument with a C. They have the data. They'll go to the drawer and pull it out. You wanted 4 things. I gave you 4 things. I did it right. I own it. I say, look, and I understand it changed. I wasn't as clear. It's my, we need to redo this and this is why. I just don't make them wrong.
I think a lot of machinists are C's because they have to be.
It's like an engineer.
Yeah, I don't think you find lots of.
Because we haven't come across with.
What did you say, Doug? I didn't hear what you said.
Well, I said, he said something about our old machinists. And he said, I think he's C. And I said, I think most machinists are C's. I said, they deal in a very precise world and man.
Yeah, right. Right.
And that's one of the things. But there are machinists. Remember that guy that worked for Neptune?
You're talking about
you knew who I'm talking about, but he would be wrong sometimes, and it was like Dude, it's okay to be wrong, but you're wrong on this one. Here's the caliper. You're measuring it wrong.
Now,
I mean,
Doug mentioned something at the beginning. If you understand the nature of your ego, the disc describes your behavioral side of your ego. If you understand the nature of your ego and you're more aware and you're more conscious, you're able to bench this a little more and you're not as sensitive. The less aware, the more fragile they are. But it's not a good idea to cheat a D, isolate an I, scare or not make it safe for an S, or criticize C. These are the things you don't want to do. You want to read, we're trying to increase communication, so why not speak to them in a way that's more satisfying to them, decreasing their stress, decreasing yours, and increasing teamwork. All right, I want to go to the first question that came up on the cover. It says, how can I use my natural leadership style to communicate, support, and empower my team and others? So, Syria, any comments you want to make on that question? That's a general question I want to ask everybody here. How can you relate it to yourself, how can I use my natural leadership style to communicate, support, and empower my team and others? What comes up for you with that question, Syria?
Just to be a better listener.
Okay, good. What about you, Matt?
Probably slow down and give more factual when presenting information.
Okay, good. Being aware of that, great. Omar, anything you want to say about that?
And the question is, how can I use my natural leadership style, right, to communicate?
Yeah,
support?
to communicate, support, empower my team and others, because you got a few people that report to you, right, Omar?
Yeah. I guess I could give them a roadmap of what needs to be accomplished, expectation.
Okay, good.
Just kind of more of a direction of what needs to be.
Yeah.
Taken.
Great. Are there any general questions that anybody, we started this with saying what you expect to get out of today. Are there any other general questions that anybody wants to ask before we go to my final question for you today, which is what's your takeaway from today and what changes do I need to make to become a more effective leader? Are there any general questions you want to ask me about DISC and leadership right now that perhaps, that you just want to brainstorm on or bring it up to the group?
Hey, there was one thing that I want to ask. Okay, so I got a bunch of don'ts that you don't like. You don't scare an S. You don't isolate an I.
Yeah.
You don't lie to a D, but I didn't get anything for the C. What don't you do to a C? Criticize? Okay.
You don't criticize them. You don't give them your feelings. They don't care about your feelings. You give them information and facts, but you say, here's where we're at. Here's what we got to get to. Here's the information. If you don't have all the information, don't sugarcoat it. Say, I know you want more information, but I don't have it. This is what I do have.
That's funny. Okay.
Number, if they're going to speak, they like it either in number, Doug. They like it they want to know the process. They're going to say, what's the steps? What is the process? Or what are the rituals? They want to know the how-tos. Where you're a DI, see, just the opposite. If you go to Doug and you say, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? Doug would get pissed off. He said, give me the ball, watch me pitch. That's not the case with a C. The C is they want to know what you want, what, why, and how, and you map it out a little more and give them the how-tos.
Okay.
Okay. Any other general questions you want to ask?
Yeah, I have a question. So
who's speaking right now?
This is Matt.
Okay, go ahead.
Over time, you want to take this down the road in about 6 months. Do these behavioral styles end up changing, or are they more just consistent with what you are? I mean, how does that work?
Well, graph 1 can change on the job. Okay, so if you, Matt, tomorrow we're going to have to do payroll. I don't think they're going to ask you to do payroll. Your C would probably even go higher on graph 1 because you'd have to do higher quality control. But what I assert, and there's no way to prove this, what I assert, and you could see this on your children, you could see that this is the hardwiring, how they came out of the womb. You can see children at age 1, 2, and 3 with their natural behavioral style. So your natural style, Matt, you probably came out of the womb as a high I talking. You were probably on your report card in grammar school say, well, he's pretty social and he talks a lot. You know, it's your wiring. It's who you are. It's how it tells us about your behavioral style. So it's probably not going to change. You've been like that all your life. Does that sound true to you?
Yeah, I would say so. On a personal level at home, I say I'm a high I. But just for work though, I mean, so does this change? Like, say if you change positions or if you're doing something.
Yes, the job requirements will impact graph 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm getting at.
What based on the way you answered it, it said that you perceived the job, whether you're right or wrong, this is how the results showed up. You perceive the job as I got to influence people and I got to get it done right. So your job is influencing and getting the quality control right. That's what it says. Now, if that's different and Doug or whoever you report to wants it different, they need to say that. Or if your job changed, your graph 1 chart might change too. You see that?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of where I was getting at. So.
Yeah, but under pressure, you revert to the I.
All right.
Free state, graph 2 happens when you're in a free state or under pressure. Okay, let's go around the room and I'll start with Stephen. The question 3 is, what changes do I need to make to become a more effective leader? So let's start with you, Stephen. You said you wanted to learn how to communicate with others. Did you achieve any of that today? You think you got insight in how to achieve to others? And secondly, what is it changes you need to make?
I know one of the changes, and I even discussed it with Doug, is that there's times I need to slow down and just come to a stop because I'm always like trying to move and always just get my stuff done. And I need to give him a moment sometimes to talk and communicate, whether longer span than I want. I just have to embrace it sometimes and realize that's like his nature. So I do find that I have to remember that everybody's different and I have to slow down every once in a while on mine.
Right.
I do realize, like, I see kind of like I've always known with Matt, he's more of a personal. You start off with personal conversations, how's it going, family, things like that. Open up the door first before you get into it. And then I'd say with like Omar being an S, it would be more to approach him as like a good friend or family, regardless who they are, is how you open that door first, not necessarily by the way you approach them in conversation, but by making them feel like almost like a brother.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Make them open faster to the conversation where I need to get my results.
Right, great. So by all of us practicing, remember step 1 in DISC is practice stopping. The mistakes we make is our egos are triggered and we react in alignment with our DISC sometimes rather than choosing. And it happens. It's still going to happen. But if you can stop, you can now say, hey, or you can have a redo. You know, you can have a redo with the person. Say, I screwed it up. I apologize. My communication wasn't right. But it's slowing down and stopping gives you choices. Very powerful exercise. Very, very powerful. So, Matt, what changes? What you said you wanted to learn more about the management team and communication with the management team. Comment on that, and then what do you need to do to become a more effective leader, Matt?
Kind of piggybacking on what Steven said, I think I need to stop and slow down and kind of approach conversations differently, depending upon who I'm speaking with, to kind of get information across in an effective way. So
great. Omar, what's the question? What changes do I need to make to become a more effective leader? Anything you want to think? Your S want to think about it, or you want to share anything?
No, I thought about it for a little bit. But I guess one of the conversations with Mike and I had yesterday is I end up saying yes too much. And that's not just coming from here, but from my wife at home too. Yes too much. and I overpromise, and I end up sacrificing other things. So,
Yeah.
so it's more being more of a realistic answer to people,
Right.
and not so much trying to please the conversation.
And that was very insightful, by the way. In Siri, you see, the S doesn't like to say no. They don't like to make waves. And so that's a very common trait. So by being aware of this, now you can deal with it, because it's not about the people making the request. It's about you saying yes when you should be saying no, or I need to think about it, right?
Right.
Okay, good. Mike, you said identification. Do you think, Mike, you got a better way of identifying people now?
I do. I think it's this has definitely helped as far as having some more key points and easy to remember ways to do it.
Yeah. And what changes you need to make to become a more effective leader?
I think my biggest weakness is stopping and listening. I tend to over talk and talk over people trying to get stuff out.
Okay.
And, I think that's my greatest weakness and something I constantly try to work on.
Yeah. And Tim, you said identification. Do you think you are better at identification now?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What's the anything your S would like to say about, or you want to think about it, what you need to do to become a more effective leader? You don't have to say anything right now if you're not ready.
I think like the stopping and identifying, people, who they are, if they're a CD or SRI or whatnot, and then for me personally, working on not withholding bad news, not overreacting, and then asking specifically for what I want and the reason behind it. Kind of goes into Omar's thing where he talked about like over promising.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes we're dealing with people that are C's or whatever that want an answer. They want a direct answer, and then I'll get indirect answers from people like, "Oh, we'll try to do this."
Yeah.
And it's
right.
like you said, it's not about it needs to be done tomorrow, but I need to know when it's going to be done and explaining that to people, maybe.
Yeah, and by the way, there were two very insightful statements made by two S's here, Tim and Omar. S's usually do not they're very good at responding to the needs of others, but they're not good at saying what they need and what they want. So the fact that you're able to be aware of that and stop, that can increase the communication with the team. Practice internally, that's very insightful. And Doug, that's examples of conscious leadership when they're doing that. Syria, you said you want more identification, and get to know them, the people here. So tell us about what you took away from today and what you need to do to be a more effective leader. We lose him again? Matt, Steve, Syria, are you guys there?
I lost them.
They're connecting.
Like they're trying to connect back.
Yeah, they're connecting back. It's your, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. Syria, you said you wanted the identification, get better identification, get to know them. How did you do today with that? And what do you need to do to become a more effective leader?
Yeah, I think I did. I learned how to approach everybody's proper way of communicating. And I think like everybody else, just to stop and be a better listener.
Yeah.
Wow.
By the way, this is another program. We have a tool. It's called stopping, but that's since everybody's mentioned that, the power of stopping, being present to what is and being with people where they're at, which is, you're still going to have breakdowns, but it just is more nurturing. Ellen, anything your takeaways from today or changes you need to make to be a more effective leader?
Well, okay, honestly, when I get a lot of information thrown at me like this, I need to, this is my S coming out.
Yes.
I need to go, make a graph and list things and study it. Because I'm not going to remember all this. So I need to like, I'm very visual, a visual learner.
Yes, good.
So,
Hence the reason for the recording, because it's probably something people are gonna have to, some people are gonna have to really digest.
Yeah. And Ellen, my sense in talking to you more and more that your profile, man, I'm not sure, but it sounds like you have more CS than what your profile describes. And so if you want to do a redo, but that's good. And that would be very C-ish and very S, is to see it, think about it, do graphs, you know, visual. That's just how they learn it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It just needs a little more time. It's not how the D's and the I's are, but that's how it is. Doug, what's your, you said today, better environment for better communication, and how to get outside, you know, how to use your, you know, how to get outside yourself, I think is how you said that. What do you want to say about today, and what do you need to do to become a more effective leader?
Well, I think I have to do both as far as slow down and speed up. I kind of approach people, I think, kind of the same way, and it's just the way I perceive that I'm supposed to. So on some people, I need to slow it down. On some people, I think I need to speed it up, and I need to lay things out in advance a little bit so people can think about them, because I've just, you know, some people have to process things more, but that's because they get a better outcome on the end result. I just fly through stuff a lot of times, and that's probably not the best way to do things.
You definitely have an ID and DI style, which is, hey, let's climb the mountain, and then a little bit of sailor here and moving around. That's all right. That's very, very comfortable for people like me. For some S's and C's, it can be confusing. You still there? I think we lost him again, huh, Tim?
Yeah, I think so.
Has this happened before with you guys?
Yeah, they need to do like a landline or something. We got new internet, but I don't know if it's that or what. But
who's your IT? Who's your IT person in the company?
They're outsourced.
It is. Okay, you still there?
Yeah, we're back on.
Okay, good.
Okay, good.
Doug, anything else? All right. One left. You still there?
You still there?
Yep.
Okay. How does
How
this
does
all fit into? I got an echo here. Being givers. How does this support being givers? What would you guys say?
Well, it helps you enhance relationships.
Great. What else?
Anything else?
And you're going to bring a higher degree of value to other people.
Yeah,
when you communicate to them better.
Anything else?
Anybody else?
Well, yeah, you learn how to communicate better. There's going to be a higher level of integrity.
Exactly. Yeah. This shows up as integrity to people. Anything else?
And I think it is helping us to grow. You know, this is not a subject that we have really, we knew we had to deal with it, but I didn't know necessarily how. So this is one way we're dealing with it.
And I didn't want to go into this session, but zero is unawareness, and 10 is clairvoyance. The concept here is moving up the consciousness scale. When you move up the consciousness scale, you got more choices. All right. Anything else that people want to say about the giver? Pursuing excellence. Excellence is products delivered on time, defect free, and communication that wows people. S, you said significance. This means that you can be significant in somebody's life. helping people understand themselves. All righty, thank you for today. I will give you all feedback by Friday. If you have questions, you can call Darlene, you can call me. I have about five different trainers. Okay, thank you. All righty.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.